Edmondson,
Here.
Bowers, Beckius,
Here.
Rabel,
Here.
Shore,
Here.
and Vest.
Here. Item number 2 is the Notice of Public Meeting, Open Meetings Act. This meeting of the City of Lincoln, Lancaster County Railroad Transportation Safety District, commonly referred to as the RTSD, is subject to and adheres to the Nebraska Open Meetings Act. A copy of the Open Meetings Act is available for inspection and is posted by the entrance to this room. The RTSD agenda and all the materials that are being considered at today's meeting were posted on the RTSD website on Monday, November 28, 2022. The RTSD website is also accessible by links from both the City of Lincoln and Lancaster County official government sites. In addition, on Monday, November 28, 2022, the meeting agenda was posted on the bulletin board located in City Hall, first floor, 555 South 10th Street. A copy of the agenda is also available at the entrance to this room. One copy of the meeting agenda and all the materials being considered today are located at the dais, and complete copies of those materials are on file at the RTSD office at 949 West Bond Street, Suite 200. We'll move on to item number 3, approval of, good morning, my friend. Good to see you. I got a little bit in a hurry. We're glad you could join us. We just finished with the Open Meetings Act, and I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes as provided.
Second.
We have a motion by Shore and a second by Rabel to approve the minutes. Any discussion or questions? Please call the roll.
Okay. Bowers,
Yes.
Beckius,
Abstain?
Rabel,
Yes.
Shore,
Yes.
Vest,
Yes.
Edmondson,
Yes.
Motion carries 5 yes, 1 abstention. Item number 4, report of statement of financial activity. I think Mr. Rohde's coming forward.
Mr. Myers happens to be in Hawaii.
Yes.
Good for him.
And we
Yes.
only hate him a little bit.
And envy him a lot.
Yeah.
He texted us and I think he survived the volcano, so. But it's kind of a historical time because that doesn't go off that often, but it sounds like he's having a lot of fun. All right, folks. Good morning, and I'm Ron Rohde from the Lancaster County Budget and Fiscal Office, and we support the RTSD in their accounting endeavors. And it's important to note that we're at 30% of the year complete. We're in a fiscal year that ends June 30th of this year. It'll be 2023. And these amounts are as of November 18th, 2022, so that we have a cutoff and we get the numbers in place so we can present to you, and Roger has all the information. So again, it's just like in the past, it's broken up into 3 sections. The first section is receipts, the second is disbursements, and the third are cash and investments. We'll go through each 3 real quickly here. Again, these numbers are as of November 18th, 38% of the year complete. As for number 1, the receipts, we are at $2.6 million received on a budget of $6.02 million, or 43% collected. We have collected on project cost reimbursements, and Roger wanted me to note this is from the Lincoln on the Move initiative. We've collected $251,380 on that. Investment interest income right now is $67,650 on a budget of $80,000, or 85% received. We were a little bit conservative on our estimate there, but I'll go through the investments here in a little bit. Total receipts are $2.9 million on a budget of $6.1 million annually, so 48% received with 38% of the year complete. A lot of it's seasonality. We'll receive some months none, some months quite a bit due to the seasonality of the receipts. The second section is disbursements. Commissions, refunds to the state of Nebraska, we're at $51,395 on a budget of $116,000, or 44%. Operating costs are $17,088 on an annual budget of $108,225, or 16%. And construction project costs are currently $127,363 on a budget of $1.4 million, or 9%. Overall disbursements are $195,846 on a budget of $1.624 million, or 12% dispersed.
Well, that number's way under, I mean, at 38% of the year gone, 12% of the budget for disbursements, we're way under budget on that, which means more money available. Anything driving that, Ron?
You know, Roger might have more information. I know that Commissioner Vest, you and I received a lot of the invoices, and I don't know how many we received. I have the detail behind the scenes on the 33rd and Cornhusker project. I think some has been expended on the Quiet Zone Initiative with Felsberg, and so I think that's the main part of it. Right now, we're just, I don't know why the lag is. Roger, he has more information when he comes up with the next portion.
Yeah, that's fine.
Great question, though. There'll be more information on that, but yeah, it is lagging quite a bit behind, so.
Especially operating costs are low, so.
Right, and that's seasonality. That's part of my accounting endeavors are booked at the end of the year. So Dennis Meyer and I, my manager, and I submit our amounts for what we support at the end of the year, and there's some others that come through at the end of the year. So it's a little bit of seasonality. We'll see more towards the end of the year. But yeah, great question.
Thank you.
Any others on disbursements? We'll get into our favorite part then. Number 3 is cash and investments. And right now we have about $571,078 liquid. And that gives Roger, and as Rick knows, we get a lot of the invoices to come through. It keeps us liquid so we can pay those invoices that come through for the projects. Ending investment balance is $21,938,180 for a total fund balance of $22,509,258. And I have to add, I work with Roger and oh shoot, out there, treasurer, Amy Wilson. Yes, sorry, and they're very good stewards and make sure that they're invested in the CDs and money market appropriately. So Roger and I and Amy work, especially Roger and Amy, at the end of every quarter, try to move these where possible, and also at the end of every month. So if you want to see some details on the investments, they are listed below. They get those from the treasurer and Amy Wilson for this meeting. You can see the top two. We all know the interest rates are creeping up, so we've had some good CD rates lately on the top two at 3.8%, and then the Frontier Bank is 3.68. So that's where your investments are going for the RTSD.
Well, just going back to the top category, Ron, with receipts, the investment interest income, you know, we're at 85% of what we forecast for the year. Is that due to these increased interest rates that we're seeing down below then?
Definitely, Commissioner Vest, is because the interest rates are creeping up. And Roger and I keep that budget a little bit conservative. I mean, next year we might take it to 100,000, but just a rough estimate, we're going to be probably 150,000 on the year, so about 200% of that budget. But yeah, great question. A lot of it's the increase in rates and the volatility there.
Yeah, that's all good news.
It's a good scenario, yeah. Other than that completes the financial portion of Statement of Financial Activities for RTSD. Any questions?
Any questions for Ron? All right, Ron, thank you so much. I would entertain a motion to accept the financial report.
Second.
Okay. We have the motion by Edmondson and second by Rabel. Please call the roll.
Okay, Beckius,
Yes.
Rabel,
Yes.
Shore,
Yes.
Best,
Yes.
Edmondson,
Yes.
and Bowers.
Yes.
Motion carries to receive the Statement of Financial Activity 6-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ron. Item number 5, this is the report regarding current budget status.
Good morning, Roger Feigert, Executive Director. It's good to see all your smiling faces this morning. I guess just picking up a little bit on the questions from the financial report as we look at the where we are in the budget, we're doing well. In the operating area, that 12%, the biggest reason there is the city has not billed the RTSD for any of the executive director services or the administrative services.
Okay.
Those two items are about $70,000. And I will be encouraging the city to get an invoice in at least for the executive directors, the superintendent time soon.
Tell them to feel no pressure on our part, Ron. I mean,
Understood. So that 70,000 in labor services, none of that has been billed.
Okay.
In the other operating expenses, we've paid out $3,300 of a $10,000 legal service, and we've paid out the entire $13,725 for accounting and budgeting. That was complete. The other expenditure in there is the commissions, $51,395. In the actual CIP portion, that if you'll remember, part of the reason that the expenditures are low for an overall overall budget of let's see, 1.6 is we also increased the budget in the crossing improvements. Well, we didn't, but that $300,000 that we typically carry for crossings, we just haven't had any crossing expense. You do have one invoice on the agenda for consideration today that would spend a little bit of that. The other biggest issue really was typically in miscellaneous engineering and emergency and safety, we budget $100,000 per year. Because of the uncertainty of the quiet zone along Highway 2 and some other issues, we increased that budget on miscellaneous engineering from $100,000 to $300,000, and the emergency and safety from $100,000 to $200,000. So there's an additional $500,000 in the budget there that may not be expended, but it's there if we need it. 33rd and Cornhusker, we had a budget of $600,000. We've spent a little less than $90,000 on that. And Chris will get into the schedule, but to make a long story short, as the environmental document in that process has moved along not as quickly as we had hoped, our consultant has done a good job of not expending budget while things are dragging and moving along. So we haven't spent much of that $600,000 yet. That explains the overall fairly low number in the budget. Also, in miscellaneous engineering, just briefly, I would say we spent just under $42,000 in that miscellaneous engineering account, and that is made up of expenditures to really three entities. FHU did the update of the 3 South Lincoln quiet zones very quickly for us this summer. We had a contract of $21,750 with them. They completed that work for just under $14,000, so kudos to them for a good job. So $14,000 is part of that $41,000, nearly $800 expenditure. And then the remainder of it is in the Southeast Lincoln Quiet Zone. Approximately $21,000 have been paid to BNSF for their review and participation in the third-party engineering agreement that they require us to pay, and then an additional $16,700 this year to FHU. That's not all we've spent in the total Southeast Quiet Zone. We are approaching $90,000. Our budget was a little over $90,000. There will be an amendment that we'll discuss later on in the agenda. So overall, I feel very comfortable where we are in the budget, and I'd answer any questions you might have.
For Roger on the, I mean, this is all good news. It's when you're ahead in revenue and low on costs.
Well, maybe then the only other thing I would say is if we have folks in the community that balance of a little over almost $22.5 million, folks may say, well, gosh, what are we doing with that? If we remember, the whole point of the RTSD was making 33rd and Cornhusker the #1 priority. We took all the other major projects out of the CIP, and we said we need to save money and build that cash balance towards doing that project. And that's exactly what this is as we continue to work on that document. So we're not hoarding their money. It is there doing exactly what you all voted and asked us to do to this point.
Yeah, well said. That's an important point to keep in front of everybody. That massive $110 million project plus, and
Yeah.
we are cautiously optimistic by the work being done where everyone to get outside funding, but we don't know the final.
No,
Final.
Chris will touch base on that a
Talk
little
about
bit. The other thing Ron brought up, he and I, working with the county treasurer's office, and I want to commend them for consistently watching what's going on with the management of money. We moved $10.5 million from short-term low yield over into CDs that we're paying in that 3 to 4% range this fall, which really makes a big difference. So we appreciate their responsibility and accountability of watching that money and helping us make the best use of it. Okay?
Right, then, Roger, I understand we do not need to take any action on item 5.
No,
Then
you do
we'll
not.
move on to number 6, report of project and crossing updates.
Okay,
Chris,
first up,
we're so
33rd and
excited to
Cornhusker.
have you here.
Excited to be here.
I keep looking for a bulldozer out there, but I know I'm a little ahead of things.
2 weeks. No, kidding. Okay, well, we're still moving forward with our environmental document. There's 3 reviews that we're still working with NDOT to complete before we can submit our draft environmental assessment. Those are environmental justice, hazardous materials, and noise. Once we get all of those reviews back from NDOT, we can incorporate them into the document and then submit the whole package to them. The other item in terms of environmental that we're working on with the state is what we call 6F coordination. So the park at 34th and Madison had federal funds that went into developing that park. And since we will be disturbing a small section of that park, not the active use space, but at least the land, we need to find a suitable spot that we can go through a conversion processes. So there's been 2 different parcels that have been identified. So we're working with Lincoln Parks and Recreation, Nebraska Game and Parks, the state, a lot of different agencies to move that forward as well. So hopefully early next year we'll be able to submit the draft environmental assessment document, and then that'll just start that process of reviews, internal review with the RTSD, review through Nebraska Department of Transportation, and then once everything has been, all the questions have been answered from us and from the state, then it'll go to FHWA for their review. And then after that, we'll be able to have a public hearing. So maybe late summer, we're hoping that we can have that public hearing with everybody for comment. And then that's just followed with wrapping up, addressing the comments that we receive from the public, wrapping up the final design, and then going to a decision document with that. So, and then the other item that we've been working on is Amendment 2. That is a separate agenda item, so we can talk about that in more details under that agenda item.
Go ahead.
Chris, if you go back to your very first statement. You said there were 3 areas we're still studying: environmental justice, noise, and what was the other one?
Hazardous materials.
Hazardous materials. Thank you.
And we've done the analysis. It's just a matter of getting the correct paperwork and the reviews through so that we can put it into our draft document.
Or submission to NDOT and then to Federal Highway.
Correct. Yep.
And what's our expected time frame to submit that to NDOT?
Well, we were hoping to submit it here in December, so I'll say early next year. We're really pushing to get that submitted because that'll start, it'll take about a month to review. It's a pretty significant document. If you remember the Pell study that we had, when you printed it out, it's about this tall. I bet you, this one will be a lot more involved. So there's a lot of documents. A lot of it's been reviewed. It'll be supporting documents and amendments, but it's still a significant environmental document. We want to make sure that we have it. Yeah. Oh, yes. Sorry. I also did want to mention that we have not heard back from the Railroad Crossing Elimination Grant that we had submitted in early October. So we don't really have a timeline of when we're expecting to get comments back from that. It could be anywhere probably from 4 to 6 months after we submitted it. So maybe February to April time period.
How much was that for?
That was for $58 million. federal dollars.
Exciting. Yeah, any other questions for Chris on this project? All right, Chris, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Item B is the Southeast Lincoln Quiet Zone.
Mark Meisinger from FHU is here to give us a quick update on the status of the Southeast Lincoln Quiet Zone.
Thanks, Roger, and good morning. Again, Mark Meisinger, Felsberg, Holton, Olvig. Good to see you. We have, I think I was here in June and gave an update. We had a diagnostic review meeting in May with BNSF and OPPD, the city and the state, and went through and looked at all of the crossings and got comments from those agencies on the required improvements that would be needed to implement a quiet zone. As part of that process, we prepared meeting minutes that went out for review and comment from those agencies. And we had been waiting for comments. We did receive comments from finally all of the agencies in mid-November. Took quite a bit longer than we were expecting to get those back. So we generally have been kind of in a holding pattern on that till we receive those. We have updated our meeting minutes, and those are going to go out here this week to Roger and then to the other agencies. Those become a final decision document. So if there are improvements that are implemented, those are the improvements that are agreed to by all the agencies as part of that review. That's part of why it took so long to get it back. There's some review by OPPD and BNSF that took a little bit longer than expected. As Roger mentioned, as part of that, with the length of the project, we've got an amendment that would extend our project to June. I can talk about that later. I don't know if this is the time to talk about that, but so we're in the process of getting that, and we would be doing the design, not design, the conceptual layout revisions from the comments that we got at the diagnostic meeting, and finalizing our report as part of that. So that's kind of the status of where we are now. I can answer
Were there any
questions.
surprises in the reports from OPPD and BNSF? Anything that you didn't expect?
The comments from BNSF, I don't know if they were surprising, but they did come back and have some unexpected costs for equipment upgrades. Apparently when they opened the crossings back up, they had existing equipment that they felt was adequate at that time. And when we went back and looked at it again, they had quite a few comments on things that were their equipment that I think needs to be upgraded.
At our cost?
Yes, it'd be a shared cost, but a majority of it would be RTSD cost. Yeah. The OPPD crossings are generally newer. Several of those are in the east part of Lincoln that were recently upgraded and redesigned and rebuilt. So the majority of those extra costs were on the BNSF side. There is the crossing at 70th Street that would need some upgrades. That's an OPPD crossing. That's actually in Lancaster County.
So after at our next meeting then, we'll anticipate seeing the final report with the full costs?
I would say a draft report. One of the steps that we need to do is get the equipment upgrade costs back from BNSF. So we'll have a draft report that'll have some preliminary opinions based on their comments, but we don't know what their actual costs are until they develop those.
Okay.
For the equipment upgrades, were they at every one of the crossings that BNSF had already converted for the
I don't think they're at
increased activity, or
I don't think they're at every one of the crossings, but I'd say a majority of them.
majority of them?
It's just items like, when you'd come back and install a set of crossing arms. They're like an older version that apparently they want to have the most recent version if they would convert it to a quiet zone.
And so the next step you said would be for them to provide us the cost of each one of these, or is that something that you do, or?
We have preliminary opinions, but they brought in their signal team from Kansas City as part of that review. And so what they identified in that meeting, they would go back and identify the costs for those items and then bring those to us, their costs. We just have an estimate, but it's, we don't know what it is until they give us because a lot of it is their labor to install those items.
But you did say that it would be shared, meaning like a 50-50 shared expense, or is that not how it
Wondering
works?
who we were sharing with.
No, I think it's more like they might kick in 5 to 10%. I don't know if Roger's got a better number on that, but yeah.
Or less, okay.
90.
I
Not really
think
sharing.
sharing is
Not really sharing.
sharing is loosely applied to this, but
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so we'll look forward to a draft with some uncertainties still in it, but at least a rough idea of where we're at
Yes.
in March then.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions for Mark? Right, Mark, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Item C is miscellaneous, Roger.
Just a couple of other quick updates. If you all remember, BNSF had a derailment and a bridge failure on the OPP line east of Bennett. When that occurred, they were very quick in getting things put back in place, but there was an extended period of, reduced speed, so the trains were running slower, and we did get a fair number of calls and concerns about additional delay at the major crossings here in Lincoln. That speed was put back to approximately 25 miles an hour, the end of October, the first part of November. So since then, I haven't had as many complaints on there, but that work did get done. Let's see, and as I mentioned, the South Lincoln Quiet Zone affirmations got done, and those have been posted on the web, so we're kind of up to date with the city on that. And as Ron mentioned also, in the Lincoln on the Move interlocal agreement between the city and the RTSD, it requires an administrative committee meeting. The mayor, the president of the RTSD, Public Works, LTU, and the RTSD. That meeting did occur, and it was very short. The committee continued to recommend that money collected, the RTSD share approximately 1.5% that Ron referenced for this last year, $251,000, continue to go to the 33rd and Cornhusker to continue to pay for the engineering. So that requirement of the interlocal was completed. And I had a tentative meeting set, or it wasn't tentative, a meeting set with Union Pacific to review the crossings on Northwest 12th, just north of the airport exit, not too far from the city's municipal services center. Due to illnesses and some other things, that meeting got canceled, and I'm working on getting that reset again to continue to work on the potential of removing those tracks up there on Northwest 12th. It's been a slow process. The only other thing I was going to report, I had hoped to be able to sit here today and tell you that the sidewalk along the north side of Old Cheney Road from Hunts Drive over to Wilderness Park would be completed. That has not occurred. The railroad is still trying to coordinate getting their panels and their work in place and coordinating with the city. The city had bid the project and does have a contractor awaiting. I'm not real confident that work is going to happen yet before the winter shutdown, so we'll just have to wait and see. We'll keep working on that. At that point, I don't have anything else to report, but would answer any questions on any other related matters.
Yeah, Jane.
Roger, could you talk a little bit more about the 12th Street tracks? They're slated to be removed.
That was my goal. If you go up Northwest 12th, there's two sets of tracks. One of them has two tracks that go across, another one has one. The industry, those are industry spur tracks, not main line, and they're in horrible disrepair.
Horrible
They're
shape.
very rough. We get a lot of complaints. And I had achieved what I thought was a draft agreement with Union Pacific to remove those tracks, and they would take the tracks out, and the RTSD would reimburse the city to put the pavement back. And at the last minute, before we signed the agreement, Union Pacific threw in another condition saying in the future, if the industry wants rail service, the city will pay to put those tracks back. And I've been negotiating with them since then to try to reduce that encumbrance a little bit, maybe to a cost share, or so that has held it up. At the same time, Union Pacific doesn't have any public project managers. They have farmed all that out to consultants. And so then I'm working with the director of public projects from Union Pacific and a consultant and ourselves and the city to try to coordinate those meetings. And so it just continues to take longer than it should.
Isn't that their standard line, that if the tracks are taken out, isn't that their normal clause that you have to put it back in?
I had never seen that clause before,
Okay.
so I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
And it could be because we haven't removed too many tracks along those lines. And at the same time, I want to understand that those spur tracks can be very important to the economy of the city of Lincoln in supplying materials and goods to our businesses, and we don't want to take that lightly. But I also want to try to be very careful with expenditures for the city.
And aren't they responsible, though, for the repair of the track itself? Because it is so rough.
The state rules indicate that that's the responsibility of the railroad. One of the reasons, or one of the good things about the RTSD always was we would cost share as an incentive for the railroads to come in and do the repair. When you think about the number of crossings they have, not only in the country, but in the state and in Lancaster County, they just have higher priorities in some of those spur tracks, and they also have cut staff, and they don't have some of the resources. They just don't get there and do some of the work. The main line is a high priority as compared to their spur tracks.
Well said. Yeah. So, Roger, so close, good effort. Thank you for your continued work in
We'll
this area.
keep trying.
Yeah, do what we can. Any other questions on that? We will move on to item number 7, consideration of an amendment to the 33rd and Cornhusker Agreement.
So Chris is going to come up and kind of go through this amendment. I think I won't say anything, and then I'll fill in the blanks if need be. But
And I apologize, I didn't introduce myself when I was up here the first time. I'm Chris Humphrey, the 33rd and Cornhusker RTSD project manager. I also have Aaron Keller, who is our consultant Olson's project manager. He's here to answer any questions as well regarding this amendment. But as Roger alluded to before, Olson's done a very good job through their efficiency in this agreement that we have with them. So the amendment that's in front of you is not a cost adjustment. There won't be, the fee will remain the same as it was in the original agreement. And that fee was originally $4,568,299.97. So that will stay the same. We're just reallocating the scope and the fee associated with some of the scope that we've either not had to do, just kind of cleaning it up. So for those of you that were around when we had the original agreement, we basically divided that agreement into 3 different sections for it to be a little bit more manageable. And right now, as we approach the submittal to the draft EA to the RTSD, that ends our second check mark with it. So it's a nice time just to clean up the scope. But basically, in this amendment with the scope, it's rooted in the decisions and the analysis that we've had through this NEPA phase. And we are reallocating some of the fees so that we can have enhanced coordination with the adjacent projects, specifically thinking of Dead Man's Run that will be done in advance of our project. in order to coordinate with utility impacts and relocation needs. So as you think of the Dead Man's Run project that will likely be under construction perhaps as early as late 24 into 25, the utility companies are going to want to get in, thinking of like for example, the 33rd Street corridor. So we want to advance some of our design, specifically the storm drainage system, so that when utilities are relocating for the Dead Man's Run project, that they'll only have to do that once. So we're advancing the design of that. We're also, part of this is advancing the bridge design, so the bridge over Dead Man's Run, and then also the bridge over the railroad tracks. So there's OLMB and BNSF that are both out there. We'll do a little bit more analysis on the pier spacing, coordinating with RTSD to make sure that at least our preliminary designs are adequate with them, and that we wouldn't have to change bridge type, or maybe potentially that could have an impact on it, but we're going to advance that design as well. And those are kind of the big things that we've adjusted in here. I guess if you have any questions about specific items that you have.
Did you have a question? No? Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, my bad. Any questions on this? So if I'm understanding it, Chris, the work that was scheduled to be completed in phase 2 came in under budget and ahead, so we're reallocating some of those funds to start on the coordination with these other projects.
Correct, yes. And I failed to mention, too, that we did modify the schedule as well, where we are a little bit behind schedule, so we've extended that 18 months. So right now, that decision document for the environmental document, the decision document for that, we're expecting to be in mid-2024.
Oh, okay. A lot of moving parts on a project like this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Roger, did you have something you wanted to?
Just if there weren't any questions, the amendment was reviewed and was satisfactory with the RTSD attorney. And I should mention, Bill Kudlik is not here today, but Richard Rice from Crosby Gunzel is here in his stead. And so if there aren't any questions, again, I think the biggest thing I'd reiterate is by the delay we had, we're able, with the savings, to actually do some additional early preliminary design that puts us ahead on the project with the monies that we had proposed. So I commend Olson's and Chris for that. And if there aren't any questions, would look for a motion to authorize the board chair or the president and the executive director to sign that amendment.
I will move approval of that.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Shore and a second by Beckius to approve the amendment on the 33rd and Cornhusker agreement. Please call the roll.
Raybold,
Yes.
Shore,
Yes.
Best,
Yes.
Edmondson,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
and Beckius.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. On to item number 8, consideration of an amendment regarding the Southeast Lincoln Quiet Zone Agreement.
Okay, so Mark is here to answer any questions, but in a nutshell, working with the railroad again, it just takes longer than we hoped. Originally, we signed a contract for just a little over $90,000, clear back in April of '21. And that schedule anticipated, while that contract was for a year, we were anticipating and hoping for a draft report at the end of June of '21. And as we approached April then of '22, we realized we were at the end of the contract and we didn't have a report. At that point, we ran through an amendment to extend the contract another year to April of '23 with no increase in fee. And then just in the lag of getting comments back from OPPD, BNSF, and as Mark said, significant amount of attention by BNSF's signal crew at all those locations and trying to identify what they felt needed to be amended, upgraded, or improved, and then working that through the minutes back and forth and trying to get consensus just took a long, long time. But throughout that whole time and up until right at this point, FHU has done a good job, but we are just now ready to expend the last of those dollars. But working with FHU, we believe that it's probably June 30 of next year to complete everything, have a final report. So this amendment would extend the contract from April of '23 to June 30th, and it has an increase of 18,000.
345.
345 to complete that work. So I think that's fairly reasonable extension. Again, FHU has tried not to spend money and time as they have waited on things. And Mark didn't come to the last board meeting, likewise, just not to spend money to come in and say, we haven't gotten anything else done. So Mark or I are here to answer any questions that you've got about just the project and this amendment. I
Any
would recommend
questions
approval of the amendment.
Of this extension and cost increase of
Yes.
18,000? Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. No, Tom? No? Anyone? Nope. Then I would entertain a motion to approve.
Before you say that, actually, I noticed on this amendment, there is not a signature place for the RTSD attorney, but Mr. Kudaluk did prepare this amendment, so he has reviewed it and is in concurrence with the amendment as written.
Good to know. All right.
Move approval.
We have,
No, that's fine, I'll second.
all right. Very good. Nice teamwork. We have a motion by Edmondson, second by Beckius to approve item number 8. Please call the roll.
Shore,
Yes.
Vest,
Yes.
Edmondson. Yes. Bowers,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
and Raybold.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. Moving on to item number 9, consideration of the city-county marking invoice.
Okay. The MUTCD and law requires that markings and signs have a certain amount of reflectivity and be visible to travelers. So both the city and the county are required to put in the advanced warning signs and the markings on the pavement that alert folks to approaching a railroad sign or a railroad crossing. And the city and the county worked together to update those markings on 14th Street down at Yankee Hill. The south side of that crossing is actually in the county. And Larry Legg, County Engineer's Office, had contacted me about the RTSD providing financial support for some of those markings, and the city had previously. I told them that I would bring this invoice. So the city agreed to put those markings in for the county on 14th Street, as well as markings on Northwest 12th and North 44th Street. The total of that invoice is $14,565.50. I think that's clearly within the mission of the RTSD, and we would pay for that out of crossing improvements. There's plenty, we haven't done any expenditures out of there at this point. And I appreciate the fact that the city and the county continue to work together, and one helps the other when they can, and then come to the RTSD. So I'd answer any questions you might have about that invoice.
I will move approval of the invoice.
Second.
Motion by Shore and second by Raybold to approve this invoice. Please call the roll.
Vest,
Yes.
Edmondson. Yes. Bowers,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
and Shore.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0. On to item number 10, report of other matters.
I don't have a lot. I would indicate the winter meeting of the National Committee on Uniform Traffic Control Devices is always in DC in January. I did not attend last year, but I have made arrangements to attend that the second week in in January. Hopefully, Federal Highway will get out a new draft MUTC manual so that we can all figure out exactly how to do our signs and markings and designs. That could also have an impact on the costs on a quiet zone. As you put in the new equipment, there could be additional requirements in there that the railroad then wants additional money. We mentioned Lincoln on the Movement, so I don't have any other matters to report today.
Right.
But I'd answer any questions.
Any questions, folks? Nope. We'll move on to item number 11, communications or correspondence. Roger?
And we didn't have anything significant to file in this period.
Once that slow order off the south track was taken off, the correspondence fell quickly because that 10-mile-an-hour speed limit was challenging.
Yes.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't realize not only was the crossing closed longer, but that provided then more time for traffic to back up.
Yeah.
And once it cleared, it took longer then for the signal cycles. The city worked hard at trying to extend some of those times and make that better, but it was frustrating for folks. At the same time, I timed some of those, and the actual preempt time, which typically had been running about 5 minutes a crossing, went to 8 or 9.
Yeah.
So, but it seems forever when you're sitting there, I know.
It's a long time, yeah. And by then, the next train could be coming, and you'd be wait, there's only one train. I'm sorry.
Well, there were
I forgot.
significant backups.
All right, moving on. Number 12, anyone from the public here that would like to speak at this time? I would take privilege here and just note that it's been an honor to serve with all of you in 2022. We are making progress. We're doing the work that's available to us. And I thank all of you for your participation in this very important work. I especially want to thank, as we spread the mission of the RTSD far and wide, we're sending out Councilwoman Raybold to the Nebraska legislature. So we'll look forward to having an ally there when we need it. Congratulations, Jane, and all the best to you in that. And we are taking over the federal government as well. As Commissioner Shore moves into Congressman Flood's office, and congratulations on that, Deb, and all the best. It's been an honor to serve with both of you, and if you have anything, we sure be glad to hear it.
Well, I know that we'll both do our part to make sure that the funding stays right there for the city of Lincoln, the county of Lancaster, and of course our state. And I know Deb will be a tremendous asset working for Congressman Flood, and because of your expertise and knowledge of all the stakeholders on all different levels. So I think together we will be a very effective team.
Deb?
I echo that, and it's been a pleasure to get to work with our friends on the city council, to get to know so many of the consultants that we've worked with over years, legal counsel, of course our top-notch financial team as well. And I can't close it out without saying it's been a real joy to work with Roger.
Yeah.
That definitely has been the highlight.
Yeah, well said, ladies, and all the best to you. Anyone else? Roger?
I simply would close and just extend my appreciation and thank you to both Jane and Deb, personally and professionally, in working with you both, extended periods of time. Deb, you might be the longest serving RTSD board member
in history, probably.
But it took you that long to kind of straighten me out. But at any rate, your efforts are recognized in this community and all the things that you've done. And again, I just want to thank you for that. On behalf of the RTSD and our staff, your help, respect, and encouragement and direction is unparalleled. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Well said, Roger. There's no way to overstate the importance of having good partners in what we're doing, and having people with your background and understanding will be an asset for all of us. Anything further? If not, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I will move we adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Shore, second by Raybold to adjourn. Please call the roll.
Edmondson,
Yes.
Bowers,
Yes.
Beckius,
Yes.
Raybold,
Yes.
Shore,
Yes.
and Vest.
Yes, yes, motion carries 6-0. We are adjourned. Merry Christmas.